This happened a few months ago in the beginning of summer. I've held off on sharing it for so long because I didn't want to be judged for my actions. I joined a stupid online dating app. I was divorced last winter. Just kind of living it up, you know? I somehow matched with this man who lived in New York. 8-hour drive from me. After texting for a few weeks, he sprung it on me that he was going to drive to see me. Since I'm staying with family since my divorce, I decided we'd get a hotel. He told me to find one and he'd pay for it. I already felt super bad he was driving so far, so I was trying to find deals and the cheapest place that wasn't sketchy as hell. I live about 45 minutes outside of the city in the state that I live in, and I'm not super familiar with some areas, so the hotel I booked ended up being no bueno. But I didn't know this until I got there. It was dark by the time I arrived after getting lost 4 times. There was a very shady motel across the street with 2 men smoking cigarettes on the porch. Lots of trucks and truckers traveling through. I was just walking into the hotel like, dang, I messed up. But I just went with it anyway. I didn't really have a choice, and NY, that's what we'll refer to him as, was about an hour away, so he'd be there soon. The hotel was run by Jamaicans, I think a family, but this comes into play later, which is why I mention it. The woman who checked me in was nice, but the place threw off weird vibes. The lighting, the smell of bleach, the carpet, I don't know. It was really bright, but also really dark, if that makes sense. I started shaking as I was trying to check in. The reservation was under NY's name, and at first she told me she couldn't find the reservation. His last name was Spanish, so I thought maybe I was pronouncing it wrong, even though I'm pretty good with Spanish. This made it awkward because now she knew I was meeting a stranger. "I thought maybe he gave you the wrong name," she said. I nervously chuckled. She put me on the 2nd floor and I was expecting an elevator, but as I turned, I saw that behind me was a huge carpeted staircase. This threw me off too. I don't know why. I get to my room and just pace around waiting for the stranger from the internet to show up. It starts raining. I'm sitting by the window sipping a glass of wine and see a pickup truck pull in. I think maybe it's him. A man in a black hoodie gets out and locks his truck. About 50 beep beeps and runs inside. I start panicking, thinking it's him, and he has no bags or luggage because he's just going to come kidnap me or something. Then there's a loud knock at my door, and I jump so hard and immediately stand up. I make my way over to the door and look through the peephole. It's NY, no black hoodie, carrying bags, so I crack the door and smile. He comes in and I share my terrifying thoughts with him and we chuckle. Sex happens. Later that night we fall asleep and he's spooning me, but also has his arms all the way around me with his head on top of my head. Super weird, I know. I was woken from a dead sleep, just so sweaty because he was holding me so tightly. And I thought that's what had woken me up. But then I heard it. Someone was messing with our door. Then I heard the handle start moving as whoever it was tried to open it, but it wouldn't open. Suddenly, NY just jumps out of bed so fast I wondered how long he had been awake listening to this to react so quickly. I pull the covers up to my chin as he's just standing in the dark in his undies looking at the door. He looks through the peephole and says he thinks it's one of the Jamaican men who work here. We had a chain on the door as well as all the locks, so we kept the chain on as he opened it a few inches. Before he could even ask what the dude wanted, this man just says, "Is the white girl in here?" And I remember getting chills all over my body. NY says no and slams the door, almost completely unbothered by this. The man says something about needing a credit card from me. NY yells back that the room is on his card, under his name, and he'll take care of it in the morning. I looked at the clock and it was like freaking 2 a.m. I turn over and just stare at the wall, hoping to fall back asleep. NY wraps his arms around me again and is immediately snoring in my ear. Good thing he was hot. The next morning we decide to go get breakfast. It's super early and we're both feeling groggy. I'm hoping as we round the corner to the stairs that no one is at the front desk because they definitely heard the noises from our room this morning and I was feeling really embarrassed. Thankfully, the front desk was empty. Then I saw him. An older, black male standing a few feet from the exit. I honestly don't know if he was Jamaican. I don't know if he was part of the family who owned this place, or a guest, or just someone else. I don't know. But his face was almost sunken in, and he had this weird, chilling look in his eyes. He was staring right at me. I knew without seeing him that this was the guy from last night. NY whispers for me to just keep walking, so I break eye contact with this guy and lean into NY as we make our way to the exit. As we pass, the male is silent. Then, as I'm pushing open the door to exit the building, he starts saying, "There's the white girl. I found the white girl. She makes a lot of noise." And NY snorted. I was terrified. I left for work after breakfast. I was gone a few hours and returned to the hotel to find the room empty. I texted NY and asked where he was, and he texted back saying he was in the laundry room and that he'd be right back up. I sat down on the bed waiting for him. I heard some footsteps outside the door, the floor creaking, like someone was standing at the door shifting their weight or something. I figured maybe NY forgot his room key, so I got up to look through the damn peephole. But it was not him. The creepy man was standing outside the door just staring into the peephole. I jumped back and started crying and called NY and yelled for him to come to the room quickly, because the man was outside the door. He was gone by the time NY ran up. He went down to the front desk and spoke to the woman about this man, but she just kept saying she had no idea who he was talking about, and that she will keep an eye out for him. That night I couldn't sleep. I just felt like I could feel him lingering around outside the door, but I was too scared to go look. NY was sleeping. I rolled over and decided to be the big spoon and wrapped my arms around him. He was still basically a stranger, but was the most comforting thing I had. We checked out the next morning. I grabbed his hand as we made our way down the stairs because guess who was standing there? Yep, the woman from the front desk was gone, though replaced by a younger male. The creepy man was smiling as we neared the bottom of the stairs. Just this awful, bone-chilling grin. "Lucky man with that white girl," was the last comment we'd heard from this creep. NY spun around and told him to back off, and then walked me to my car. He waited while I drove off to make sure no one followed me. I don't know, maybe there's more we could have done. But again, he never did anything. It was just a very unnerving experience. About a month later, I was telling my dad about it, and he laughed and told me I had picked the worst part of the city, and said that he thought he had heard about this place being shut down multiple times for either drugs or trafficking. I can't remember, and then it would go under new ownership. Note: NY are still in contact as friends. The distance was too big of an obstacle, and I'm not sure there was more there other than physical attraction, but he is a great person and will check in on me every now and again to make sure I'm good. I don't meet strangers off the internet anymore.
When I was in high school, I knew my parents' divorce was imminent. My mom was cheating on my dad, and my dad was cheating on my mom. I did everything I could to prevent my parents divorcing, but I knew it was a lost cause. My mother had been planning to leave him for a long time, and eventually served him on my 17th birthday. They agreed to live under the same roof until I was out of high school, so I wouldn't have the stress of having two homes. When I was a little over 18, my mom had been consistently conversating with new men on multiple dating apps. She even got an app that I was known to use called Kick Messenger. She fell asleep with the app open one night and I seen that she was messaging a man. I ignored it, but I'd known the name and seen the face multiple times on her cell phone. Fast forward maybe 2 months. My dad and I were just spending time together and wanted to go out somewhere to eat. His friend called him up that night. My dad has been known to be a social drinker who frequented local bars. He had many good friends that were bartenders and fellow social drinkers. His friend was at the local bar and met a man named AJ who was looking for my father, by name, in order to buy a vehicle. My dad is a car sales manager. So we stopped by the bar that night because we just thought we'd eat there. The bar isn't really shabby or the typical bar most would think of. We live in a small town and the bar was on the lake and people could rent lots to put their campers on. It was like a club/lodge. This man introduced himself as AJ. However, I recognized him immediately as the man who my mother had been conversating online with. I didn't say anything to my dad at first. I for sure thought he just looked similar and I was overreacting. That is, until he called me by my full name, without anyone introducing him to me or even saying my name. He knew my first, middle, and last name. He also came up to me to greet me at the table I was sitting at. He tried getting me to open lotto tickets for him and was rubbing up against me and trying to touch my inner thighs. I was kind of frozen and didn't know what to do. He eventually left me alone after he saw people staring at him. I did what I knew I had to do. I Googled his full name on Google and Facebook, and that's when I found out that he was a registered sex offender / ex-con in the bordering state over. I looked repeatedly from AJ to the man on my phone screen, and there was no doubt he was the same dude. He only lived about 30 minutes away from my home. I pulled my dad to the side and told him that this man was not who he said he was. I showed him the picture and the information that I had found. I ran to the bathroom crying because I knew something bad was happening. He lied about his name, knew both me and my father's names, and knew where my father worked. After hearing this info, my dad refused to go outside with AJ. He made multiple attempts at getting my dad outside alone to take a look at my dad's truck, due to the fact that he wanted something similar. He eventually stopped pushing my dad and went outside for a smoke. The manager of the bar immediately locked the doors and locked him outside, refusing to let him back in. Everyone in the bar, most of them were close friends of my dad, had seen how suspicious he was acting, and many had seen him rubbing up against me. The manager called the cops to report him. It didn't take him long to figure out that he had been caught, and he attempted to leave the bar and drive away. My dad followed him up the road, trying to make sure he didn't get away. However, he was plastered and ended up crashing in the snowbank just up the road from the bar. He was caught by police and charged with the DWI. He was jailed just 5 minutes up the road from my home. I did not sleep a good night's sleep for about a month. If he knew my family as well as he seemed to, he probably knew where I lived. He was bailed out only 2 days after the incident. His vehicle had been found with duct tape, drugs, rope, a crowbar, and other materials in it when they impounded his car. He was also charged for violating his probation. He's a Tier 3 sex offender. He had raped a minor with a deadly weapon and was required to register for life. He was not supposed to leave the state at the time of the incident, not supposed to have a Facebook or almost any form of social media where he could reach a minor, and was not allowed to even operate his vehicle due to his license being taken away. I also ended up pressing charges for sexual harassment as well as getting a restraining order against him. I also found out later through phone records and the police tracking his phone that he'd driven past my home more than 20 times in the week leading up to the incident. He had also been to my dad's job and my school multiple times throughout a period of 6 months. He'd been following both of us for a long time. I've never experienced something so crazy or scary in my life. I live in a completely different state thousands of miles away now, thank God. But my family is still in the state that the incident happened. He still has yet to be charged or arrested with the harassment or stalking charges, and probably never will be, seeing as he knows if he comes back to the state, he can be arrested if he so much as pulled over because he has a warrant out for his arrest. Since then, I never put my full name on any social media. I only put my first name. I become a very paranoid person when it comes to my full name and my address or other personal info. Please everyone be careful who you talk to on dating sites. You never know who's behind the screen or what their true intentions are. And if you do find someone you like, investigate and do your homework. I lived in a town with a population of 5,000, and I never once thought this kind of thing could happen to me. But it can, and it will happen.
This was 3 years ago, and I started college down the country. I was 18 and on Tinder. I never actually met anyone off of it, but I would just swipe through guys just to be nosy and see who was on it. I was swiping right on some, and about an hour after, got a message off this guy who, according to his account, was about 20 kilometers away. We made some small talk. It was awkward, and I stopped replying. A day later, I got a friend request from him on Facebook. Mind you, I have a common enough name so it would have taken ages for him to have found me. We have no mutual friends, and my Tinder photos are not on my Facebook page. The only thing I had on it was the university I was attending. So maybe that's how he found me, but I don't know. I then quickly got a follow request on Instagram, and he somehow found my Snapchat username. I don't have it on my social media, and it is a variation of my full name with extra added in vowels and an underscore. I was freaking out at this point. I messaged him asking how he found out my full name, and he just replied with, "I think we have a connection. I really want to get to know you better." I unmatched him, deleted my Tinder, and blocked the accounts he tried to add me on all social media. After that, it was quiet for a few months. I was staying in digs and was knuckling down as I had a lot of assignments from the get-go. This was towards the end of November. I had no assignments due for 2 weeks, so I decided to go out with some friends. One of my friends stayed in student accommodation, and the other was commuting, so she was staying with the other friend. I decided to walk back to my digs, as my landlady would probably freak out if I wasn't home that morning, and I really wish I got a taxi instead. My walk back was about 15 minutes from the local nightclub we were at. It was about 3 a.m. at this point. I was at the front door of the house opening up. The door was annoying as it had 2 different locks, and I had to pull the handle towards myself to help open it up. It's also tough when you're tipsy and trying not to wake up the family you're staying with. Anyway, as I finally unlock the door, a dark car pulls into the housing estate I'm staying in. It's quite big and has a big green area in the middle for children to play with their dogs. The car comes towards me, so I quickly get inside and lock the door. The car pulls into the driveway of the house I'm staying in and just sits there with the full headlights on. I'm there shaking and too afraid to move from crouched below the door as there's frosted glass about halfway up. As I get the courage to go upstairs to look out my bedroom window to see who it is, the car pulls out of the driveway and speeds away. A few days later, I got a new friend request off the creepy Tinder guy on a new Facebook profile, as there were no photos on this account. Just the same name. Blocked. It was enough that it caused me to transfer universities the following year. Thankfully, I haven't heard anything since. I don't know if it was just bad timing or if it was that creep on Tinder that sat in the driveway. But it was petrifying. If you take anything from this, be careful who you let in on social media or dating apps and what information you have up.
I had been sent to Korea from my university a few years ago. They told me for my major I had to go somewhere in Asia, and my friend had really talked up Korea for me. I knew nothing about it, but I decided what the hell, and I embarked on a semester-long trip. I had only one serious boyfriend in my life, who I had broken up with a few months prior. I also don't enjoy one-night stands and wasn't digging the dudes at the nightclubs in Seoul, but I still wanted to have some sort of romantic experience, I suppose. So my friend recommended I use this dating app to meet English-speaking Koreans. That way, I can meet someone and experience the actual dating culture. I thought, I'm young, so why not? I was just so eager to have new experiences. Maybe it sounds dumb to try dating in a foreign country, but it worked out for me eventually. Just not the first date. I met him on a dating app after being in Seoul for about 3 weeks. Let's call him Tim. I still didn't know the culture or city very well. It was a bit naive about everything. He eagerly wanted to meet for a date after talking to me, and he seemed nice. I should have asked more questions, and I should have noticed that he was not giving me many details about himself. Tim was a guy a bit older than me, but claimed he was a college student. I assumed he had done his military time, then returned to school. We talked for a bit and decided to meet for a tea date near the school I went to. He wanted to come to my dorm originally to pick me up, but I live in an all-women's dorm and didn't want him to know exactly where I lived since we were still strangers. So instead I insisted we meet at the main town center near the subway. He really didn't like this idea, which looking back was a red flag, but eventually I insisted. The night of the date I waited an hour for this guy. He was very late. Tim weirdly claimed he just wanted to make me wait. I thought he was kidding and messaged him a laughing emoji, assuming he was just lost. When he finally arrived, he was much smaller than I thought, but a man's height has never been something I care about much. He was also quite thin. Maybe I let my guard down because I didn't see him as physically threatening to me, which was a mistake in the end. Right off the bat, he was way too touchy with me and breathed creepy and heavy. I was so off-put by his demeanor. I'm usually very tolerant with different personality types, but this was very odd to me. I had been told that Korean men would be polite and not so touchy on the first date. He was also dressed oddly, like in business attire for a date, but I thought that maybe it's just a Korean thing. Again, I was dumb and knew jack shit about the culture. Then, the first thing he said to me was, "You're not as white as I thought you were." I thought this was a translation error, but his English was near perfect. So I asked for clarification, and he said what he meant. I thought you would be more white. Your skin is darker than I thought, and your eyes aren't as green. Are you pure European? Now I was officially weirded out. First of all, I'm pretty much as white as you can get. I'm Irish and Scandinavian, so white as hell basically. So the fact that he thought that I could have possibly been any whiter was funny. And why did he care in the first place anyway? Why does my skin color matter to this guy? And why is he bringing it up? He said about 3 times on the date how he wished I had greener eyes. And every time I would just reply, well, maybe my online photos make me look brighter. And brush it off as him being nervous and trying to start a conversation. Isn't it funny the dumb excuses you make for people when you're panicked? When we arrived at the tea place, I tried to order a basic raspberry tea, and he stopped me and told me I have to have this special tea. I thought it was weird he wanted to choose my tea for me, but in my head I brushed it off once again. He really insisted I drink only this type of tea, and I just agreed. These small details become weirder later. After tea, he asked if we can look around my school. It was dark, but the school is very well lit, so I agreed. And the whole time we walked around, he would randomly stop and grab me for long hugs. At first I let it happen, but then I stopped him, and he just kept trying. He kept grabbing me and breathing hard into my neck. It was so awkward. He'd also not tell me any personal details about himself. I asked so many questions, desperately, trying to distract from all the awkward grabbing, and to try and get to know him, but he would never tell me anything. He even said at one point, "I'm a mysterious man," like a movie line. He also said something like, "You look so much like my favorite movie character." And I asked who, but he said that I would have to figure it out on my own. Finally, he said, "I want to go to a dark area." And in my head, I screamed, "Hell no." At this point, I wanted the date over and fast. He somehow knew there was a wooded area behind my campus, and he said we should go there. I said no, and that I wanted to stay near the main campus in town. But he kept pushing. Finally, he grabbed my arm and started dragging me there. He said, "I can't let anyone see." And I started to panic. I finally ripped my arm away and just demanded we leave and go back to the main road immediately. Looking back, I don't know why I didn't ask for help or get angry. Maybe I was scared. But I just began to book it back to the main road, and he followed. We ended up in front of a hospital near the center of town, and I told him it was time for him to go. I made some excuse, and he was pleading with me to stay. I told him we could meet the next day, but I lied, and that I would message him. I just wanted to get away at this point. I was pretending it was all okay, just so he would leave. Suddenly, I think he's leaning in to kiss me, and I immediately think, "Oh God, no." But it was so much worse. Instead, I feel pain in my face. It takes me a second to realize he was biting my face. It was like a dog. I'd never felt the sensation before. He leaned his head sideways and bit me on my nose and cheek as hard as he could. I screamed and pushed him away from me. His face looked so freaky, and I barely had time to react in words. Instead, I ran up the sidewalk until I saw a convenience store on the right. I ran into the back of the store and bent down to start crying. The man who owned the store started to yell at me, but I couldn't explain my situation. I just begged him in English to let me stay. I ended up having to buy a popsicle to stick around. God, I wish I learned some Korean by then. I guess Tim didn't follow me. I peered outside the store and didn't see him. I texted a friend and waited for them to get me to take me back to my dorm. On the way, I messaged Tim and basically told him to stay away from me. I told him he was a creep, that he shouldn't bite women, and something along the lines of me calling the police. And then I blocked him. I was so scared to walk around my school area after that. I was so afraid he would find me somehow. I'm so thankful I never let him pick me up at my dorm. I called my mom to tell her what had happened when suddenly she said, "Wait, what did he ask you?" She then put some details together and realized that all of these weird things had to do with the 50 Shades of Grey books. At first, I thought she was being silly and overthinking a bad date. I thought she was joking. But oh God, was she right. She had recently seen the movie or read the book of something and knew the details. The eye color and the way he dressed, and the tea he made me drink and the random lines he said. It all matches the books and the movies. For his dirty little fantasy. My mom thinks he picked me because I looked like the girl in the movie to him. It explains why he was so fixated on my appearance. And his whole thing with the biting and trying to dominate me. Even if it wasn't his intention, I later learned that there are some few creeps who seek out foreign girls to dominate and have sex with them as like a prize. They call it riding the white horse or something along those lines. On a happier note, this bad experience didn't stop me. I eventually met someone else in Korea, and we ended up falling in love. We even did the whole long distance thing, and now I'm living in Korea studying and working, hoping to marry soon. So I guess I didn't let bad creepy guys stop my life. As for Tim, let's not meet. It's been years, but I still will kick your ass if I see you. And I won't have to bite. Hey guys, the Dark Narrator here, and thank you guys so much for watching this video. This has been a video that I've been trying to get together for about, God, I don't even know how long. I've been talking about doing a collab with Gothic for months. Ever since I actually met her or found out about her, that's when I wanted to do a collab with her, and it just never happened. It was never a case of like either of us being busy, or maybe just not on her end, but I was always really busy, and I was always like trying to get certain things out. And then eventually I was just like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna ask her. And she said yes, and she got it to me really fast and was really sweet about it. And she's just awesome to work with. So please go check out GothicRose. You probably already know who she is, and a lot of you are probably here because you watch her. So please go check her out and subscribe and like all of her videos, because she's just really talented. I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for something like this with GothicRose, and I'm finally, I'm giving you guys what you've been waiting for, and I'm so sorry for it taking so long. So thank you guys so much for watching again, and I will see you guys next time for another video. See you later.